Gana nartana paro premamritam. All together. Unidi dira dira jana priyo priyakaro nirmatsaro pujito Shite tanya kripabarau bhuvi bhuva varavahantarako Vande rupa sanatano raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Back Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipunao Sadharma Samstapakao Lokanam Itakarino Tribhuvane Manya Sharanyakaro Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Bande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Shri Gauranga Gunarnuvarna Navidao Shraddha Samridhyan Vitao Papo Tapa Nikrintanao Tanubritam Govinda Ganamritai Andandam Buddhivardhanaika Nipuna Kaivalya Nistarako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Taktivaturnamasheshamandalapati Shrenim Sadatu Chavar Utvadina Ganesha Kau Karunaya Kau Pinakam Tashrita Gopi Bhavara Samritabdi Lahari Kalola Magna Mohu Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Gujat Kokila Hangsasara Sagana Kirne Mayura Kule Nanarana Nibara Mula Vitapa Shri Yukta Vrindavane Radha Krishna Maharnisham Prabhabuto Jivarta Doyo Muda Bande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natibi Kalavasani Kritao Nidrahara Viharakari Vijatao Chatyanta Dinao Chayao Radha Krishna Gunasmrite Madhurima Nandena Sammohito Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Radha Kundata Te Kalinda Tanaya Tire Chavam Shivate Premon Maravashara Shesha Dashaya Grastau pramatau sada Gayantau chakadaharer gunavaram Bhava vibhutau muda Banderu pasanatano raguyago Shri Jiva Gopalako He Radhe Vraja Devike Chalalite He Nanda Suno Kutaha Shri Govardhana Kalpa Parapatale Kalindi Vanye Kutaha Goshantaviti Sarvato Rajapure Kedar Mahavivalo Bande Rupa Sanatano Raguyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Bande Rupa Sanatano Raguyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raguyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Shad Goswami Ashtakam Ki Shad Goswami Ki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Welcome back to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Thanks for joining us online from various places around the world. And for those of you who've joined us right here in the live devotee audience, it's so nice to be back with you and have an opportunity to continue our reading of the Nectar of Devotion and a discussion of the teachings of Rupa Goswami as he had received them from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Last week we had read most of the preface, and in the preface we heard that the material world, we still have japa going on, if that's okay. It's kind of nice in a way. We heard about how service is the dharma. That is that nature which is inseparable from the living being. Just as sugar is sweet, fire is hot. So similarly, the living being is a servant eternally, and that's the dharma. These are all teachings. Rupa Goswami met directly with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag, Allahabad, at the Dashashwamedha bathing ghat. And Mahaprabhu told him about material life. The nature of this material life is, he said, called bhoga tyaga. There's a way in which I try to enjoy, and as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yehi samsparshaja bhoga tukha yonaya evate adyantavan takonteya nateshu ramate bhutha. That an intelligent person doesn't try to enjoy the material world because he knows that it leads to misery. But a person who's uninformed, didn't get the memo on that one, and tries to enjoy, and then suffers, and then thinks, I'll just give it all up, and then goes to the other side, which is called tyaga. So then Mahaprabhu describes the actual path for success, which is what the Buddhists would call the middle path. We call the path of dedication or devotional service. Means realizing that our eternal nature is to serve Krishna. Krishna doesn't need our service, as Prahlad Maharaj says in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. When we give to Krishna, it's for our own benefit. It's not that he's hungry. Although for his devotees, he becomes hungry and becomes helpless, so they can serve him in that way. And when we give to Krishna, then we become more complete because we're his parts and parcels, the way a leaf is a part and parcel of a plant. And if you water the root of the tree, then the leaves naturally become satisfied. So he also talks about rasa. Rasa means the taste that we're getting. And the theory of rasa is central to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and subsequently of Rupa Goswami, because he puts it in this framework, and that is that everybody's working hard to try to get a little taste. Where does the taste come from? It comes from relationships. So we see in this world various relationships. For instance, there's the relationships of a servant to a master, and then there's a relationship of friend to friend. And there are obviously nuances there because there are various kinds of levels of intensity amongst friends. And then there's parents and children. Then there are lovers. And we see these relationships in this world, and as well as others. But those are the primary. And those, claim Rupa Goswami, actually come from the spiritual world originally. However, when we try to enact those relationships in the material world, we feel dissatisfied because they diminish over time. In fact, they can change very quickly. In the Bhagavatam, it's mentioned how somebody who's a family member or friend then suddenly over a farthing or a dime becomes an enemy. And these things happen more frequently than one might think here in this world. So the relationships here in this world tend to be frustrating, and even in the best of circumstances, they're temporary, and we lose the object of our love and affection at some point. So rasa is something to be aspired for, that is bhakti rasa, that is the life of relationship with Krishna. And that's really the basic principle of the nectar devotion, is how to revive our original loving relationship with Krishna. That can be practically done. So he talked about how that rasa will expand unlimitedly. It's not like in this world where there's diminishment. In the bhakti rasa, he gives the example of a beam of life. Theoretically, if you point it up into the sky, it will expand unlimitedly. Any physics majors in here can confirm. Otherwise, you'll have to call Vrindavan Priya. So Prabhupada finishes the preface by saying in the last paragraph that the nectar devotion is specifically presented for persons who are now engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. So it's an internal book, although he did have us distribute them widely at some point. And if you're in the Saptarishi movement, you're also, it's part of the package. I beg to offer my sincere thanks to all my friends and disciples who are helping me to push forward the Krishna consciousness movement in the Western countries, and I beg to acknowledge with thanks the contribution made by my beloved disciple, Sriman Jayananda Brahmachari. Now here's evidence of what we talk about frequently when you donate whatever wealth you now temporarily have in your hands to help expand this Krishna conscious movement, especially through printing literature or building temples and so many other ways, then you become immortal. Jayananda Prabhu is immortalized here. He had money. It came from his parents. He just said, "Here, Prabhupada, you take it." It was a lot of money back then, $5,000. And so there it is. If he had held on to it, put it in a no-load mutual fund, which didn't exist back then, but if he had, who knows, someone else would have needed it. It would have gone another way. But give what you can now to expand Krishna consciousness, and you'll be immortalized. My thanks are due as well to the directors of ISKCON Press, that was the precursor to the BBT, who have taken so much care in publishing this great literature. Hare Krishna, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, 13th April 1970. ISKCON headquarters, 3764 Vaisesika Avenue, Los Angeles, California. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanande Haribo. Introduction to the Nectar Devotion. Invoking auspiciousness. Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the reservoir of all rasas, or relationships, which are called neutrality, passive adoration, servitorship, friendship, parenthood, conjugal love, comedy, compassion, fear, chivalry, ghastliness, wonder, and devastation. He is the supreme attractive form, and by his universal and transcendental attractive features, he has captivated all the gopis headed by Taraka, Palika, Shyama, Lalita, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Let his lordship's grace be on us, so that there may not be any hindrance in the execution of this duty of writing the nectar of devotion. Impelled by his divine grace, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada and of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, by whose inspiration I have been engaged in the matter of compiling this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the sublime science of devotional service as propounded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years ago in West Bengal, India, to propagate the movement of Krishna consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami begins his great book by offering his respectful obeisances unto Sri Sanatana Goswami, who is his elder brother and spiritual master. And he prays that Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu may be very pleasing to him. He further prays that by residing in that ocean of nectar, Sri Sanatana Goswami may always feel transcendental pleasure in the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the great devotees and acharyas, holy teachers, who are compared to sharks in the great ocean of nectar and who do not care for the various rivers of liberation. Impersonalists are very fond of merging into the Supreme like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation, and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water, which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. They have no information, however, that within the ocean, as within the river, there are innumerable aquatic living entities. The sharks who dwell in the ocean do not care for the rivers that are gliding down into it. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service, and they do not care for the rivers. In other words, those who are pure devotees always remain in the ocean of transcendental loving service to the Lord and have no business with the other processes which are compared to the rivers that only gradually come to the ocean. Srila Rupa Goswami prays to his spiritual master, Srila Sanatana Goswami, for the protection of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service, from the argumentative logicians who unnecessarily meddle in the science of service to the Lord. He compares their arguments and logic to volcanic eruptions in the midst of the ocean. In the midst of the ocean, volcanic eruptions can do very little harm, and similarly those who are against devotional service to the Lord and who put forward many philosophical theses about the ultimate transcendental realization cannot disturb this great ocean of devotional service. The author of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, very humbly submits that he is just trying to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, although he humbly thinks himself unfit for this work. That should be the attitude of all preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement, following in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. We should never think of ourselves as great preachers, but should always consider that we are simply instrumental to the previous acharyas, and simply by following in their footsteps, we may be able to do something for the benefit of suffering humanity. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is divided into 4 parts, just as the ocean is sometimes divided into 4 parts. And there are different sections within each of these 4 divisions. Everyone okay so far? Originally in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean, I'm going to stop in a minute and we'll go back over. Originally in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean is divided like the watery ocean into east, south, west, and north, while the subsections within these different divisions are called waves. As in the ocean, there are always different waves, either on the eastern side, the southern side, the western side, or the northern side. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu similarly has different waves. In the first part, there are 4 waves, the first being a general description of devotional service. The second concerns the regulative principles for executing devotional service, and the third wave, devotional service in ecstasy. In the fourth is the ultimate goal of life, love of God. These will be explicitly described along with their different symptoms. The authorized descriptions of bhakti or devotional service following in the footsteps of previous acharyas can be summarized in the following statement by Srila Rupa Goswami. So I'm going to stop there for a minute, and we'll just talk about the opening to the book that we've heard so far, this introduction. Of course, following in the footsteps of previous authors, there's a precedent that Vaishnava authors write a Mangalacharana. And Rupa Goswami does so in the very beginning. Mangalacharana is meant for 3 purposes. One is to state what the goal of the book is. A second is to offer obeisances to those who are the superiors, who are the guides, helping one move forward. And the third is to give some benediction to the reader. By reading this book, one will receive such and such benediction. So in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami does this. You'll see the artfulness in which Prabhupada has given the summary of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In his Mangalacharana, he's offering obeisances, stating what Rupa Goswami said, offering obeisances to Sanatana Goswami. It's his elder brother and also his spiritual master. Of course, Sanatana Goswami was famous in Vrindavan even to this very day on Guru Purnima. Everyone in Vrindavan shaves their heads. It's the most crowded day on the Parikram Marg of any other day. And it's really celebrating Srila Sanatana Goswami. He was a friend to all in Vrindavan. People, even with household troubles, would come to him for mediation or for advice, or if anyone could come for spiritual advice or counsel to understand the Shastras more deeply. But he was known to be a friend to everyone. And the day that Sanatana Goswami is celebrated, everyone remembers him very fondly there in Vrindavan. So does Rupa Goswami here at the very beginning. And he also gives a verse to start off to tell what the goal of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is, and that is Krishna. Big surprise. So Krishna, he gives as Akila Rasamrita Sindhu. He is the ocean of all rasas, the origin of all the rasas. The rasa is the taste from the relationship that we're getting. And all of them, as is mentioned in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmad Yasya Yataha, emanate from Krishna. And so there's a famous verse by which the author starts off. If you look at Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 8.142, you'll find the verse, and we should look at it because it's the verse which states the goal of the nectar devotion, or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And here, I'll say, please repeat. That'll be 8.142. Thank you. Akila Rasamrita Murti. Prasrimara Ruchi Ruda Tarakapali. Kalita Shyama Lalito. Radha Prayan Vidhura Jayati. And the word for word you'll find very interesting. Akila Rasamrita Murti. The reservoir of all pleasure, in which exist all the mellows of devotional service, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Prasrimara, spreading forth. Ruchi, by his bodily luster. Rudha, who has subjugated. Taraka, the gopi named Taraka. Pali, the gopi named Pali. Kalita, who has absorbed the minds of. Shyama, the gopi named Shyama. Lalita, and the gopi named Lalita. Radha Prayan, dearmost to Srimati Radharani. Vidu, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jayati, all glories to. Translation is this. We can say together, let Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified. By virtue of his expanding attractive features, he subjugated the gopis named Taraka and Pali, and absorbed the minds of Shyama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani, and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all transcendental mellows. And here's Prabhupada's purport. Everyone has a particular transcendental mellow by which he loves and serves Krishna. Krishna is the most attractive feature for every kind of devotee. He is therefore called Akila Rasamrita Murti, the transcendental form of attraction for all kinds of devotees. Whether the devotee be in the Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, or Madhuryaras. This is the opening verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. So the mind immediately goes to the center point, which is to fix it on Krishna, is the goal of this book, and that he's the Akila Rasamrita Sindhu. He's the origin of all the different rasas. And Jiva Goswami points out in this section that all these rasas are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, throughout the book, we'll find that Rupa Goswami catalogs, actually, the different rasas, and gives us perfect explanations of what they look like, what their symptoms are, how they're developed, and so forth. And in the verse, we had a whole class on this a year or so ago. Maybe it was 10 years, I have no idea anymore. But about the statement in the verse, Vidu, how Krishna is called Vidu. And this is an important word in this So you see, vidur jayati. So in the word for word, we have it here, Vidu, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the word Vidu is important because it describes some of Krishna's qualities. One of them is that Krishna excels in all excellent qualities. Vidur jayati means to conquer, to excel in. So if you're looking for the best of all qualities, they're in Krishna. They all come from Krishna originally. It also means vidunoti, which means he defeats, or he transcends all sufferings and surpasses all things. So vidunoti, who knows a verse, who can quote a verse in which the word vidunoti is mentioned? I'll give you a hint. Anyone in this room can do it. Yes, go ahead, please.
Shrinvatam Swakratha Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Ridantak Stoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhritsatam.
Lord Shri Krishna, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. That's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 2nd chapter, 17th verse. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. So here it is mentioned that Krishna's name is Vidunoti, that is here in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Vidu Jayati. One of the ways he conquers through the transcendental vibration of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vidunoti Suhritsatam. He is the best friend within the heart. And by hearing about him, the direct process of devotional service beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, this is Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna. If you give reception to the pastimes, to the instructions of Krishna, then Krishna, from within the heart, becomes Vidunoti. He helps you to conquer over the obstacles. In fact, he helps you sort them all out. Or, a better word, winnow. Can you look it up, please? Winnow. To winnow something out. I think it's W-I-N-N-O-W, right? Means, anyway, I'll let you say so. It doesn't steal any thunder here. Vidunoti Suhritsatam, and it also indicates he's the best friend within the heart. So the Suhrit, he's always there with us, always eager to help.
Winnow is a verb which means blow a current of air through, usually grain, in order to remove the chaff. So to blow a current of air to remove the chaff.
Any farmers in here? Rice farmers?
And it comes from wind vane, from Old English, wind vane.
Wind what?
Wind vane, W-I-N-D, W-I-A-N, wind
Yeah,
vane.
so it's what? What was the second word? Wind. So when you blow against the rice, the chaff comes off, and then you're left with the kernel. So Krishna helps to purify us from within the heart. That's the meaning of Vidunoti. He applies a little bit of his magical... Anyway, let's not go down that road yet. It'll start a whole conversation. Also, Vidu means vidadati. He produces. The person who produces all happiness or who causes everything. So vidadati means that he's the source of everything. It's helpful to know that, because if we're to fulfill all the desires that we may have, we should know that we're looking in the right direction. And if we understand Krishna's nature, that he is helpful in removing the obstacles, also that he's the source of all happiness, can actually do something about it as well, then we can unabashedly point our attention towards Krishna. As mentioned in the advice given by Sutta Goswami in the 1st canto, 2nd chapter of the Bhagavatam, Tasmad ekena manasa bhagavan sattvatam pati shotavya kirtitavyascha dhyaya pujascha nityada. And that is that therefore, tasmad means therefore, one should give one's full attention to Krishna And you can do so through the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, etc. The various direct methods of devotional service as mentioned by Sri Prahlad Maharaj in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Incidentally, when his father asked him, what's the best thing you learned? That's what he told him, the 9 processes of devotional service. I don't think that Hiranyakashipu was able to take full advantage of it at that time. He produces, so the person who produces all happiness. Wouldn't you like to know that person and be in touch? Yeah. So then, there are many commentaries, several commentaries on the Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, but Jiva Goswami goes through several verses, which we won't do right now. We did it in that one class, describing these qualities of Krishna from the Bhagavatam, how he destroys all suffering, how he surpasses all others, how he bestows the greatest happiness, how he's the source of everything else, and how he's existing eternally with all excellences. And these are all verses documenting this quality of Krishna, or these qualities of Krishna, indicated by the word vidur jayati. So, one other point about the very poetical opening verse. Again, it says, let Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified by virtue of his expanding attractive features. He subjugated the gopis named Taraka and Pali and absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani, and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all transcendental mellows. Isn't that a kind of a astounding and rather esoteric opening to the book? He's mentioning the various associates of Krishna in the spiritual world, in his intimate circle. And according to the commentaries, he mentions Taraka and Pali, and Shama and Lalita, and then Radharani. So, as is mentioned, they're in different categories of intimacy with Krishna, and in chronological order, he mentions them. Culminating with Srimati Radharani. And then he gives an alternative verse to the translation here in the Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, in which actually the whole verse is describing Krishna as a moon. The moon, more poets refer to the moon in romantic terms than they do to the sun. It has a kind of effect on people, does the moon, when it rises, and especially at certain times, like in the spring when there's a constellation of Lalita, and the moon appears at that time, it's especially potent. So he gives that context, and then he said the moon at night when it's full in springtime and it's surrounded by the stars has some influence over us and reminds us of Krishna surrounded by his loving devotees. So it's a very poetical opening up to the book and introducing us to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the very essence of Sambandha Gyan, understanding that actually we're dealing with a very unusual and great personality, the greatest of all, Krishna, who's Akila Rasamrita Murti, the form of all rasas, and that person who is can remove all our obstacles. He's the source of everything and everyone, and he has his own personal life in the spiritual world. A couple more thoughts, and then we're going to take reflections. So there was a catalog of the various rasas given, the 5 primary rasas, and then there are 7 secondary rasas which are mentioned. So this gives an essential list of the various ways in which we get our taste in our relationships, these various rasas. And the point here is that Krishna is the sole object of rasa. He's the reservoir of rasa. He's all lovable. And we'll find as we go forward that the more majesty there is. Majesty meaning in a personality like great opulence. The less rasa there is. And this example is given in the text itself, that if somebody's approaching a personality who's a judge, if you approach that person in the context of his being a judge, you'll see one very limited aspect of that person, because there are protocols that he has to follow in the context of being a judge. But when he goes home and he's hanging around with his wife and his children and his friends and so forth, you see another side. Is that really him? And so in the majesty of Vaikuntha, the rasa is limited. And there's more of a sense of servitude, that I'm serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the language of Radhika Raman Prabhu, when that is suppressed, to a certain degree, when you see Krishna in Vrindavan, you'll see that he's a little child, he's a baby, then a little child, and then an adolescent. And there, his opulence is not apparent. It's not fully visible, although it's always there. And we see it in the pastime with Brahma, when Brahma tried to make a trick towards Krishna, and then he was tricked back by Krishna, but much harder, because Krishna's all-powerful. Then did Brahma, Narayan's emanating from the body of the Lord. And he saw the opulence of Krishna. It's always there, but it's suppressed in Vrindavan. And there, the rasas become fully pronounced in all their various, in their varieties. So now we'll take a few reflections before we go to the next section. Yes?
So Maharaj Radha Venkat Prabhu from Folsom, he actually also submitted a verse which has the word Vidhunoti.
Okay.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
Extra points for that.
It is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, verse number 15. And it says, if you're he's bringing it up. Yat kirtanam, yat smaranam, yat ikshanam, yad vandanam, yad shravanam, yad arhanam, lokasya sadyo vidhunoti kalmasham, tasmai subhadra shravase namo namaha.
Translation?
Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer.
Now go up for the word. Let's look at the word vidhunoti. And we'll see here, vidhunoti specifically cleanses. Yeah. Winnows out the unnecessary things from our heart. The process of hearing about Krishna, another thing.
And Bharat, I had a question about the Vaikuntha planets, where we see that the souls who reach there also get the four-handed form of Vishnu. And so what exactly goes on there? I mean, other than just worship, we have so many nice descriptions of Goloka, like Krishna is going there to tend to the cows.
Well, Lord Narayan, actually, you'll see in Vaikuntha, it's not just everyone's just four-handed there. There are many different ways in which the devotees there in Vaikuntha manifest spiritual bodies according to their attraction to a particular form of Krishna. And Sanatana Goswami describes this in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. In fact, when Gopakumar comes to Vaikuntha, he's waiting outside before he can be invited in. It's a little ceremonious there. And he sees, first of all, forms of the Lord that he actually thinks they're Narayan. So he begins to offer obeisances, and they're actually devotees who have attained Sarupya Mukti. And so they say, no, not me. I'm not Narayan. And then he sees a multitude of other forms that are as multifarious as the forms here in the material world, as we see 8,400,000 species of various lives, and we know from the Srimad Bhagavatam, do we not, in 1:2:34, that Krishna Krishna appears in all different species of life. So sometimes living entities become attracted to a particular form, and then their bodies also assume that form too. So he saw spiritual bodies in many different forms in which they were in that emotion of thinking of that particular form of the Lord. So it's multifarious, but mostly the sentiment there is a service. But what are Narayan's pastimes? Sometimes he's going off to do some kingly work. Sometimes he's going off for some kind of battle. There's chivalry there and other kinds of nuances in the rasa. But when Gopakumar comes into Vaikuntha, he has his own particular sentiment for the Lord, and Narayan there responds because he can hardly keep his forearms when he sees his devotee from Vrindavan, whose ultimate object of worship is Madan Gopal. And there, as Gopakumar is observing him, he'll see him changing into that form, because Krishna is dominated by love. Ye prayaso jita jito pyasitaishtra lokyam, says Lord Brahma in his prayers. Jnane prayasam udapasyanamanta eva jivanti san mukaritam bhavadiyavartam stani stita shutikatam tanuvan manobir ye prayaso jita jito pyasitaishtra lokyam. Brahma says, if you take to the process of pure devotional service, he's giving up jnana karma, any kind of speculation about the Lord, philosophical speculation, and just hear about Krishna's pastimes from the right source, through parampara. Stane stita, that's what that means. Stay where you are, but hear. And if you hear sufficiently, that process will take effect, and it'll come to the point where you'll be able to relate to the Lord in such an intimate way that He's actually moved by your sentiment, of love towards Him. Yes.
Thank you.
So somewhere in the introduction, I think we read that the various theories and arguments, they are like volcanic eruptions amidst the ocean, and they can do very little harm because the ocean is so vast. So I just...
Yeah, that's right.
I just remember.
Because I don't know if volcanists will agree with us, because sometimes it causes tidal waves. But it does say in the midst of the ocean. Yeah. So, yes, and you were going to make a point.
And I also wanted to mention, again, somewhere in Chaitanya Chaitamrita, the author says that the various theories are like crocodiles. I just remembered that when he says, and a child can swim through that ocean by the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So I just remember. That's
a good point. It's a nice connection you're making back to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which this idea about interference in the process of bhakti comes along. So this comes up in the introduction. And so one of the metaphors that Rupa Goswami uses is that devotees are like sharks. And so sharks don't hang out in rivers, thankfully. And they're in the deep ocean. And so sharks don't dabble in anything else, or devotees don't dabble in other processes. And we'll hear the verse which actually gives the definition of Uttama Bhakti, or pure devotional service, just coming up. Anyabhilashita shunyam, actually just arrived. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanyanavritam anukulina krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. That devotees aren't interested in other paths, like jnana and karma. Jnana means the path of renunciation of the world through philosophical speculation. One separates oneself from all that's material and says, I'm spiritual, I'm not material. This ultimately leads to a hard heart, renunciation also, and the whole philosophical method can usually lead to an impersonal conception of the Lord, which is the antithesis of devotional service, in which we start off with this image of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the most loving person with whom we have an eternal relationship. And so this is the process of Uttama Bhakti, and that is something we're going to go into in just a minute. But I wanted to make the point also that the sharks are not only averse to rivers, they stay in the deep ocean, and therefore they're never caught. That's another one of the points about the sharks. Because if you go deep enough, the people who are fishing around the surface aren't going to get you. And there was one other point about sharks. What was that? They refuse lesser bodies of water, so they reject the rivers and all these little tributaries. They don't need it because Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahi Sudra Danyascha Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Kritahoy. If you give yourself completely to the process of devotional service, then all other things are done. Liberation comes with folded hands and says, how can I serve you? All other aspects that are desirable to people in this world are available to anyone who takes to the process of devotional service, and that's a fact. And also, they don't merge. So sharks don't merge. Say sharks don't merge. That could be a bumper sticker. It's very esoteric. Sharks don't merge. So the impersonalists are eager to merge into the impersonal absolute truth, but sharks stay in the vast ocean and they have a life there. So similarly, devotees swim in the ocean of rasa, of devotional service, bhakti rasa, and they have their eternal individual existence there in relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There were a couple more reflections. Oh my goodness, there's a few more. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had the similar point that stuck to me, which you just mentioned about acharyas are compared to sharks in the ocean, which Prabhupada mentions in the introduction to the purport to this Bhakti Rasamrita. I had a question, actually, a follow-up to this. So, liberation, basically, as from an impersonalist perspective, it means that they want to get out of the cycle of birth and death, and then they want to merge. So in the initial stages of devotional service also, or one can actually, one's drive for devotional service can be that one wants to get out of the cycle of birth and death. So is that a right thing? Because the attachment for devotional service, that's more...
Well, this comes up in various places. One is in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter, where Krishna says, Chaturvida bhajanti mam jana sukritino arjuna, arto jignasa artarti gyani cha bharatarshapha. That is, 4 kinds of pious people, sukritis, approach me for various reasons. Some of them want wealth. Some of them are suffering, so they just want the suffering to stop. Other people eager for knowledge. And other people are already in knowledge of the absolute truth, and therefore they approach. So the tenor of this verse is that people approach Krishna according to their capacity. They have some adhikari, some sukriti, but they also may have material desires. And therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Akama sarva kamo va, moksha kama udarati, tivrena bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. And that is that whatever situation you're in now, akama, which means you don't have any material desires at all. Who is like that? Shukadeva Goswami. Kama sarva kamo, somebody has all material desires. Who is like that? Huh? You? Okay. Juva. Akama sarva kama moksha kama. So somebody just want liberation. I want to be liberated from this material world. Moksha kama udharadi. Divrena bhakti yogena. If you concentrate, take this concentrated ray of devotional service, then you'll come to the perfect stage. And this is indicated, of course, very graphically in the story of Dhruva Maharaj, who intensely wanted some material thing, and then he received Krishna instead. Satyam dishati artito artito nirnam naivartato yat artito yata swayam vidate bhajatam anichatam ichapitaram nijapadapallavam. That famous verse in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that I just mangled. But it says that somebody may approach me and ask for material benedictions again and again. That could include liberation. He said, I reward those things, but then I give them in such a way that I cover their material desire and I actually make them attached to me instead. Icha pitadam, icha, I make their desire, icha pitadam, for my lotus feet, for my service. So the Bhagavatam is very encouraging in that way. In the beginning, if one has some desire for something, it says, approach Krishna anyway. And gradually that will be purified. But the standard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches in the Shikshashtam, Mama Janmani, Janmanishvare. He says, I'm not seeking liberation. I take birth after birth here in the material world, just as long as I can be engaged in pure devotional service. There's no other expectation for anything. Become liberated from this world. So there was several more. One was here, then there's there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. We'll try to answer these more briefly so we can move on to the next section. Go right
Just
ahead.
a quick observation, Prabhu. I was just noticing how Rupa Goswami feels that he is unfit, and Prabhupada is explaining the mood of the preachers, that even though they do great things, but they think that they are just an instrument in the hands of previous acharyas. But they got to see Mahaprabhu personally, but still Rupa Goswami exhibits such great humility.
Yes, this is a great paradox. And Mahaprabhu mentions this in his teachings to Sanatana Goswami when he tells about the 9 symptoms of bhava. And in that list, it mentions that as one advances in devotional service, he or she becomes more and more qualified. At the same time, that person is thinking, I'm less and less qualified. And this is the mood of someone who's getting the mercy of the Lord, because the more they become humble and submissive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the more they're tasting the mercy of the Lord. So they keep themselves always in that position. Okay, there was a few more. 1, 2, 3.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. There was one quality that was listed, which was ghastliness. In material world, it has a bad connotation, but it's a transcendental quality of Krishna. So how do we understand that quality?
You don't like ghastliness? I'll bet you do. When you're driving on the freeway and there's a big major accident on the other side, tell me you don't slow down and look. Do you? Anyone? No one wants to admit it. I mean, everyone. I mean, why do you think traffic slows down so much? You know, you're going by and it was like, whoa! Did you see that? You know, it's ghastly. It's a taste here in the material world. You'll see it in the Bhagavatam too. There's all kinds. I mean, Bhagavatam, Ramayana. It goes on and on. Just, you know, limbs severed, blood everywhere. Krishna erects the Dwarka fort. Read that as a bedtime story. Kids will love it. It's all, you know, it's just like oceans of blood. Krishna and Balaram massacring all these soldiers that Jarasandha sent. And the hair looks like seaweed in the ocean of blood, and the bows look like turtles. And I mean, it's ghastly, and it's really cool. I mean, we were distributing Krishna book at the airport all the time. He's like, yeah, they're nature stories, you know, for the kids. And then you turn and it's like blood everywhere. Anyway, kids do like that stuff. Prabhu, give him the mic. You can stay there. It'll come to you. 7 seconds or less. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, my question is regarding how does this concept of bhakti applies when we consider different religions? Like there are saints in even Christianity or even in the Muslim community, Islam, there are different saints who talk about, they are renunciates, many of the saints. And is there any difference in the bhava, the bhakti? Like when you talk about surrendering to Lord, getting mercy of the Lord, even they have those concepts. So how is it different? When we talk about Bhagavatam, we talk about surrender. Like,
sure. So really it's a universal principle because we're all eternal parts and parcels of Krishna. Sanitya nitya sambandha prakritischa paraivasa, Brahma Samhita says, every one of us, we're an eternal servant and we're a part and parcel of Krishna. We have an eternal kinship with him, says the translation in that Brahma Samhita. So it's a very intimate relationship. And it's realized according to the method that one uses to approach the Lord. Therefore, the gold standard is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai pumsam parodharmo yato bhaktiradhoksaje ahaitu kiya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. It is not a sectarian principle, it's a universal principle of a haituki bhakti. That is, that I have no motivation in worshiping the Supreme Lord except for to worship him. And it's uninterrupted. In other words, it's not something I just do on Sunday and the rest of the time I do whatever I like. But the principle or the quality of pure devotional service is very important, that one is actually unmotivated and uninterrupted in one's approach. Then it says one can experience this bhava fully when one's in that environment. Now, especially when we have a clear definition of who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. Oftentimes there's bhakti, but it's very faint in various traditions in the world because, as an example, there may be prayers, but who are you praying to? I always wondered this. Before I came in contact with the Bhagavad Gita as it is, I was ravenously reading all kinds of spiritual books to find out how to, become a devotee. And there were prayers that were being suggested, and I'd read them, but then it would circle back and say, well, you are the Supreme. So that didn't really make sense to me because of how am I praying to myself? And, how is that a sincere prayer? It seemed to loop back. And there may be also other traditions in where it's recognized that I'm a devotee and I'm a servitor of the Lord. And to the degree that there's some actual way to conceive of that personality. Because after all, love is not something that happens when there's a very nondescript image of the Supreme. Christianity, which is definitely a bhakti movement, it has to do with worshiping with one's heart and soul the Supreme Person and loving him. But oftentimes we'll find that the description of the Lord is not altogether clear. The description of the kingdom of God is not given in a lot of detail. And even from the very beginning of the Jesus movement, there has been a debate about whether Jesus is actually God himself or he's the servant of God. That's there in the early church, and they had to work that all out. And of course, there are many, many branches of Christianity, but in all of them, you won't go into a church and then here's the form of God. You'll say, well, this is God in the flesh, but is it God or the Son of God, and so forth. So my point is that when we have this principle or these qualities, the gold standard we'll call it, of a haitukiya pratiyata, unmotivated, uninterrupted service, as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you have a place to repose your love and vision. For instance, we're getting a feast from Rupa Goswami, Akila Rasamrita, Murti, the form of all rasa. I mean, Krishna is so beautiful. We were reading yesterday about how when Krishna goes around Vrindavan as a cowherder with his brother, they take the ropes, because they're cowherders, they have ropes all the time. Actually, those ropes are really beautiful because some of them have pearls on the end. They wrap them around their turbans. I mean, how cool is that? Krishna walks around with like ropes. He has all these styles. Or he dresses up, puts the rope around his turban, he picks up stuff from the forest, and he's all the time, everyone's like, whoa. And so there's an object for one's love that is very specific, and that's why Bhakti Rasamrita is so important. It talks about what are the relationships, what are the feelings that emerge at a certain point. So all the other bhakti movements that are out there, in Islam, bhakti, there's bhakti. In Christianity, there's bhakti, in the Jesus movement and so forth. But here, we're getting articulated what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, you may argue about that. You may say, I don't think Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Prabhupada would then say, okay, you show us your God then. Bring a better God, and we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we've got Krishna. And good luck finding somebody better. Okay. Were there any other comments? Yes, last one, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So, I tend to think of Bhakti Yoga
Keep
as...
the mic below your lip. Thank you.
Okay. I tend to think of the Bhakti Yoga as a path of devotion which is full of love. And one of the ways that I've tried to understand it is related to the experiences that we have in our daily life, and which is, as I'm reading a lot of the literature from Srila Prabhupada, is that there is this marked difference between the material world and the transcendental, and our goal is to move from the material to the transcendental. So my question is, what are some of the characteristics of that devotional love? Like, what are the things that one aspiring devotee needs to keep in mind to make the distinction in the mind, oh, no, I'm faltering from the ideal? Does it make sense?
Distinctions to show that you're not in line or something, you said?
Yeah, like some of the characteristics of the devotional love that is the standard, that is what we should be aspiring for.
I see. Okay, yes. Well, first to your general point, and that is whatever relationships or variety of any kind we see in the material world, Krishna says, is a reflection of the spiritual world. And therefore, the relationships we see in this world come from the spiritual world, because everyone has an eternal, specific relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And furthermore, in the spiritual world, there's variety. And that's why we see variety here in this world. Because, as Krishna mentions in the beginning of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that Urdhva Mulamada Shakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Saveda Vid Adashjordvam Prashritastasya Shaka Guna Pravrida Vishaya Pravala Adashya Mulan Anusantatani Karmani Bandini Manusha Loke Narupamasyeha Tatopa Labhyate Nanto Nachadir Nachasam Pratishta Ashvatamenam Suvaruda Bulam Ashanga Shastrena Dridhena Chitva Tatapadam Tat Parimargitavyam Yasmin Gatanan Yavartanti Bhuya Tameva Chadyam Purusham Prapadye Yatak Pravriti Prashrita Purani. So there he describes how the material world is like a reflection of the spiritual world, and like a banyan tree which has its roots upward and its branches down. So the spiritual world then is reflected onto the three modes of material nature. And so all the variety that's there in the spiritual world we see here, but here it's temporary. So if you approach the reflection in a reflecting pool, you'll be disappointed because it doesn't live up to the actual thing itself that's being reflected. So Krishna says you have to cut down that deeply rooted tree with the weapon of detachment, and thereafter go to the source, who is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's very clear in that. So in the beginning, we are advised to follow the rules and that help us to stay within the framework of practicing bhakti. And all of them are servants to the principle that one should always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And if one applies the system of bhakti, even from the very beginning, as we'll find in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, one will find immediate results. Some of those are mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yashuvairagyam Jnanam Chayarahaitukam. Two of the concomitant features that come from giving oneself to the process of devotional service are a sense of detachment from the material world and knowledge, understanding that I'm not this body. So those things come as a natural byproduct of practicing a devotional service. And as one continues in the process of bhakti, one becomes more attracted to hearing about Krishna, and then develops an actual positive taste. One loses one's long cherished attraction for enjoying material nature, and then begins to transfer one's attention to Krishna with an intense taste and then attachment. And then bhava, or the awakening of emotions, occurs within one's heart. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, when one's touched by the array of the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so now we have before us the introduction. Where did we end? Okay. The authorized descriptions of bhakti or devotional service following in the footsteps of previous acharyas can be summarized in the following statement by Srila Rupa Goswami. First-class devotional service is known by one's tendency to be fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, serving the Lord favorably. The purport is that one may also be in Krishna consciousness unfavorably, but that cannot be counted as pure devotional service. So just a question, if you're engaged in devotional service but is unfavorable, in other words, your intention is not to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maybe you're an enemy of the Lord, but you're thinking of Him. That's one of the process of devotional service. Is that does that fit within the definition of pure devotional service? Are you sure? Okay, then say no really loud. No. Okay, it's not. Pure devotional service should be free from the desire for any material benefit or for sense gratification, as these desires are cultivated through fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. Generally, people are engaged in different activities to get some material profit. While most philosophers are engaged in proposing transcendental realization through volumes of word jugglery and speculation. Pure devotional service must always be free from such fruitive activities and philosophical speculations. One has to learn Krishna consciousness or pure devotional service from the authorities by spontaneous, loving service. We're right in the middle of the summary of perhaps the most important verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a definition of pure devotional service. This can be very helpful. So he's continuing here, unpacking this verse, and we're going to go back and talk about it in just a minute, if you're up to it. This devotional service is a sort of cultivation. It is not simply inaction for people who like to be inactive or devote their time to silent meditation. There are many different methods for people who want this, but cultivation of Krishna consciousness is different. The particular word used by Srila Rupa Goswami in this connection is anushilana. What is the word? Or cultivation by following the predecessor teachers, acharyas. As soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. Without activity, consciousness alone cannot help us. All activities may be divided into two classes. One class may be for achieving a certain goal, and the other may be for avoiding some unfavorable circumstance. In Sanskrit, these activities are called pravritti and nivritti, positive and negative action. There are many examples of negative action. For instance, a diseased person has to be cautious and take medicine in order to avoid some unfavorable illness. I once read the whole Nectar Devotion in one day. I sat with my friend Prem Kishore, who now lives in Vrindavan. We were in Denver at the time. We lived in a tiny little room, and we sat in the closet, and we passed the book back and forth until we finished the whole thing. It can be done. But I'm not going to do it tonight, don't worry. Those who are cultivating spiritual life and executing devotional service are always engaged in activity. Such activity can be performed with the body or with the mind. Thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind, and when we will to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. There are activities of the body, activities of the mind, and activities of speech. A Krishna-conscious person engages his words in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is called kirtan. What's it called? Kirtan. And by his mind, a Krishna-conscious person always thinks of the activities of the Lord as he is speaking on the battlefield of Kurukshetra or engaging in his various pastimes of Vrindavan with his devotees. In this way, one can always think of the activities of the pastimes of the Lord. This is the mental culture of Krishna consciousness. Last paragraph before we cut into conversation. Similarly, we can offer many services with our bodily activities, but all such activities must be in relationship with Krishna. Correct. This relationship is established by connecting oneself with the bona fide spiritual master, who is the direct representative of Krishna in disciplic succession. Therefore, the execution of Krishna-conscious activities with the body should be directed by the spiritual master and then performed with faith. The connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and a person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna consciousness is never performed. So we're in the midst of analyzing, hearing Prabhupada's analysis of the verse, Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma nyaravritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. So this is a definition of pure devotional service. And in it, he's saying that one should not try to understand God by one's intelligence. We heard that from Brahma, jnane prayasam. He said, completely give up trying to understand God by your intellect. So also, give up fruitive activities. Naishkarmyam apyachuta bhava varjitam nashobhate jnanam alam niranjanam kutak punashashvat bhadram ishvare nacharpitam karma yadapyakaranam. This is something Narada Muni says, that self-realization that doesn't have a chuta bhava, or a sense of love for Krishna, it's practically not very nice. It's not beautiful. It's nashobhate. It doesn't look good. Nashobhate jnanam alam niranjana. Even if you have full knowledge of the atma tattva jnana, but you don't have bhava for achuta, feeling for the Supreme Personality of God, it's not very nice. What to speak of then fruitive activities, which are troublesome in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. The charpitam karma yadapyakaranam. What to speak of that? So this is directing us the right way. It's bringing us to this point. Don't fall for material activities. It's for stupid people. Don't engage in trying to understand God through philosophical speculation, because you'll come to the wrong conclusion. You're not powerful enough to understand God in that way. If the Absolute wants to reveal himself, he will. And therefore, bhakti is about positioning oneself in such a way that the Lord will reveal himself to us. Atashi Krishna namadi na bhaved grayam indri seva mukhi jivado swayam eva spuratyada. Don't try to see God. Act in such a way that God will want to see you, because you can't understand him through your blunt material senses. Tiny little humans can't understand anything practically. But we try to speculate and say, oh, I understand God. This is ludicrous. However, with bhakti, which is so powerful, Brahma says, Atapi te deva padam bhuja dvaya prasada leshana grihita evahi janati tatvam bhagavan mahimno dachanya eko picharam bachinban. That is, if you just have a tiny, tiny little trace of bhakti, a little inclination towards hearing about Krishna and associating with the devotees, then Krishna will reveal himself. You can understand everything. But if you try through other means, then you won't understand even after millions of years. Pantastu koti shatava shata. Sambragamyo vayuradhapi manaso munipungavavan. The munipungavas, the best of the munis, they may have powerful breathing exercises and some kind of mystic powers and stuff like that, but they can't come close, even to the tips of the toes. They miss the Bhagavan. For Bhagavan, you have to have the process of bhakti, devotional service, and that's the subject matter here. So, anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma nyanavritam. Then comes anukulyena krishnanu shilanam. So, anukulyena means favorable. Your intention has to be to please Krishna. That's important, what your intention is, because you'll find throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam that all kinds of people that looked totally unqualified for devotional service ended up as the great heroes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was one person that fits that description that I'm thinking of right now. Use your mystic powers that you've got from Sankirtan over all these years. Who is someone who, on the face of it, looked like completely unqualified for devotional service? You think, that person can't be a devotee. But it ended up being Vritrasura. Vritrasura. Remember Vritrasura? Vritrasura was a huge demon. Everyone's afraid of him. He's in the original Vedas, he's mentioned, the fight between Indra and Vritrasura. And in the Bhagavatam brings out the fact that this Vritrasura, he was actually a devotee. The body of a demon, and killed the demigods as much as he could. But the bhakti was there. So this is, bhakti is unimpeded by the circumstances, and it's the most important. It overcomes any other obstacle. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati kinchana sarvar gunas tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratena sati tavato behid. Bhagavatam says if you take to bhakti, then naturally, whatever situation you're in now, you'll develop all good qualities. It will all come out by practicing devotional service. So if that intention is there to serve Krishna, actually it happened even Shishupal, when he was a little baby and he started to talk, all the words that were coming out of his mouth were about how much he hated Krishna. And he had the worst things to say about him. And in the Rajasuya sacrifice, see, there was a benediction. Krishna said, well, only until it gives 100 blasphemies in a row will I actually kill him. But he did it at Rajasuya because he was so upset that Samba had recommended that Krishna become the object of worship at the Rajasuya sacrifice. So he stood up and he was one blasphemy after another, and this little clicker maybe. And then he came to 100, and then Krishna threw his disc to kill him. And in the flash of a millisecond before his head was cut off, Shishupal was looking at Krishna and he was thinking, he's beautiful. And then, and that was his tiny little service, Lesha anugrihita evahi, just a tiny little trace of bhakti. And then they said that's why he became benedicted, because he had that at the last minute. So wherever that trace of bhakti appears, with the intention of serving Krishna, somehow or other there's some kind of feeling for Krishna and some devotional movement in that way, then devotional service is present. Anukulyena krishnanu shilanam, it has to be favorable. And also, it's shil is the verb, in anushilanam, which means cultivation. So Prabhupada, as Radhika Raman Prabhu pointed out, didn't just say devotion, as a lot of people say. He said devotional service. Because that means what we saw the devotees doing whenever I was here last Sunday or something, and I went in the kitchen and they were washing pots, and I went over to appreciate their service, and they didn't even see me because they were so absorbed in washing the pots. There was such ecstasy coming out of that room. It's a cultivation. Actually, there's something you do. And that is described by Rupa Goswami as both internal and external. The way in which you conduct yourself externally is very important in the practice of devotional service. There's sadhana that you do in cultivating bhakti. For instance, japa involves moving the tongue and lips, does it not? And enunciating the words in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And it's something you actually position yourself for. Externally, you'll sit down or walk or whatever you do, and you'll chant, you'll listen, you use your senses. This is a positive, but it's a cultivation. You actually do that practice. And Shil also has to do with cultivating internally a mood of devotional service, and in your meditations on Krishna, you're also Shil, or cultivating Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna Anushilanam means favorable cultivation of devotional service. Now we'll take a few more reflections or questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I just had an observation, but was looking for some advice. When you were reading Nectar of Devotion, even the preface, when typically I read a book, even spiritual book, I just try to find where the real information is. Okay, let's go there, start from here. This is just a beginning, it's not that important. How do I develop that deep, each word has meaning? I could see when you were reading it as feel like you don't want to miss one, and I always look for missing all those words. So just want to see if some advice on that side would be helpful.
Well, it's a cultivation. And the more we cultivate by hearing, especially in the association of those who have a taste, the more we'll pick it up. It's infectious. Once somebody asked Prabhupada, how do you get a taste for chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada gives the example, how do you become a drunkard? And he said, to become a drunkard, you go hang out with drunkards. And you watch them, and they'll, come on over, you sit down, we'll show you how to do it. They go in the liquor store, they get a bottle in a brown bag, and then they come and they sit and they sip on it, and then they start getting silly, and then they start getting melancholy, and then they fall on the ground and vomit, whatever they do. And then they wake up under the park bench, and they get up the next day, they get a little money together, and they go get another bottle. And that's how they do it. And if you hang out with them enough, they'll show you how. And then you can do it too. And this is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is going on constantly in the material world. Purusha prakriti stohi bhunte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. He said by association, we're attaining all our different positions because, believe it or not, we're a lot more vulnerable than we think. And that's a double-edged sword, because if you get bad association, even without your knowledge, you'll suddenly start doing things that are destructive to yourself and to your reputation and to your livelihood and everything else. But if you get good association, which is the key to success in any discipline, but especially devotional service, then you'll develop all the kinds of taste and good habits and everything else that you're eager to have. So it's a matter of associating, and real association means to serve and hear in the association of satam, which means those who are sincere about the practice of devotional service. Yes? We can't give any points for any words spoken without the microphone.
Okay. Hare Krishna. I wanted to check, what does spontaneous loving service mean? The spontaneous word before loving service, and also...
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Spontaneous loving service. Like, we see it in this world oftentimes with a mother for a child. A mother spontaneously serves the child. It's not like she thinks about it a lot. Like the child's there and maybe the child cries, the mother jumps up. She's not thinking like, what do I do now? There's a book I have to read. There's something, she knows immediately, and it happens in all species of life. Dayanidhi Prabhu got attacked by a hawk the other day because the hawk had little babies up in the tree, and the mother hawk saw Dayanidhi as a possible threat and just came and attacked him. That's some kind of spontaneous devotion right there. Mothers do it all the time. And in spontaneous devotional service, there's not a dependence on rules and regulations, any special, announcement in Shastra, you should do this or that, which is important in the beginning. But when there's spontaneous devotional service, there's a way in which the devotee naturally is attracted to Krishna without any other consideration at all. Spontaneous means spontaneous. Just happens.
And so is loving service is the same as devotional service, or is it different in a way?
Yeah, it's the same thing. When we talk about devotional service, or I should say Rupa Goswami, as we said here, is talking about it at its different stages. So there's a stage of practice, because in the beginning, although we may understand the concept of loving devotional service to the Lord, we may not have a spontaneous attraction for Krishna. I might have a spontaneous attraction for something else, like, I don't know, going to a baseball game or something. Or what? Gulab jamuns are not bad. You can have that. If they're offered to Krishna, that's almost pure loving service. But really about what we hear. You can judge how much you're spontaneously attracted to a particular subject matter. Like some people, they like to hear about news of the material world. It's a kind of rasa. Like especially in the last few years, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but people have really absorbed in this rasa of like, this is terrible, or, us against you. There's a kind of, perverse enjoyment people get about reading the newspaper. Because every day it's like, he said what? Or, whatever it is, there's some conflict, or there's something, somebody said who said what to whom. And all this is like kind of contaminated sound vibration. So people develop a spontaneous desire to hear that. And however, if you hear about Krishna, you'll develop a spontaneous attraction to hear about him. And that's when you actually notice that you're advancing in devotional service. It's hearing that. So loving devotional service arises naturally in the heart of one who associates with the sound vibration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, pravishtakarna randrena swanam bhavam saroruham dhunoti shamalam Krishna shalilasya yatasharat. There's a very beautiful poetical verse that says that when you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the actual incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then it establishes one's loving relationship with Krishna within one's heart. And simultaneously, it's removing the obstacles from the heart. And one develops loving devotional service after hearing and performing devotional service for some time. Yes?
So Maharaj, you had talked about cultivating, how to cultivate devotional service through association. There was a question by Anuradha Susevani Devi Dasi, and she was asking that how can we constantly and steadily be able to conquer our senses while in the midst of material world, as we cannot leave everything and go to the forest like Dhruv Maharaj. What's the option for me?
That answer is given in the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna was a person who was a family man. He wasn't suited for the forest. In fact, Krishna told him, if you go to the forest, you're not going to be able to live there because you have a different nature. Sometimes sages go to the forest and they actually like it there. They're like, finally, I've got a place I can sit and no one will bother me. But other people have a different nature. They like to mix it up with society. So Arjuna was like that. He was a Kshatriya. He had this warrior nature. So much so that, these Kshatriyas, Prabhupada describes, they like to fight. And when when a fight comes up, they're, where? Let's go. So the solution for him was not to give up fighting. But Krishna says, Tasmat sarvishu kaleshu mamanusmara yudyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mami vaishasya samshayaha. So without a doubt, he said, if you apply this principle that I'm teaching you, and that is that while you're doing your worldly duties, which are absolutely necessary for you because you can't get out of them, if you simultaneously think of me, Krishna, then he said, without a doubt, you'll attain perfection. So the secret ingredient there is to remember Krishna. Now, how do you do that? That's a good question. Prabhupada answers it in the purport. He says, if you chant Hare Krishna as part of your life, as an example, if you take time every day to actually chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and listen carefully, then you will naturally transform from the inside out, and your whole world will transform as well. Not only that, while you're doing the rest of the work that you have to do during the day, you'll naturally think of Krishna, because Krishna and his name are non-different. And so you may have a japa session and then go off to do your work, and your whole relationship with the world and with your work will be very different. Or you may choose to continue chanting Hare Krishna while you're working. Maybe not out loud because of the circumstances, but internally you can keep the Maha Mantra going. So that advice was given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Can you chant if you go to the restroom? We have a yes and a no. Well, that discussion came up when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, actually there was a question that arose, and there was a young boy there named Gopal, and he said, the holy name is eternally pure. It should be chanted at any time, even when one goes to answer the call of nature. And Mahaprabhu then noted, he said to Gopal, your new name is Gopal Guru. He became a great acharya. The holy name can be on your lips all the time. Kirtaniya Sadahari. And this is the means by which one can overcome the material nature, rise above it through the process of devotional service. And that is a fact. Okay, so you had one more. Yes? The servant of the source of all entertainment needs a microphone. Why would we deprive him and make him get up? I can't
Hare Krishna
understand.
Maharaj. Maharaj, I have a question regarding spontaneous devotional service.
Yes.
You said that one is naturally favorable towards serving Krishna. That's the meaning of spontaneous devotional service. One is not bound by any rules and regulations at that point. I mean, whatever one does, it's automatically as per the definition of pure devotional service. Is that understanding right, Maharaj?
Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach a couple of very important things. One of them was what is called Ragatmika Bhakti. And you'll find this in the Adi Lila of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, does Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that everybody knows about the ways in which to worship Krishna in his majestic form in Vaikuntha, but nobody knows, he says, about this intimate, loving service to Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan that takes place with what are called the Ragatmika Bhaktas, those who are spontaneously attracted to serving Krishna in various relationships, like as a servant, as a friend, as a parent, as a lover. So he came to teach this kind of a development of devotional service by hearing and following in the footsteps of those devotees in Vrindavan. That's called the Raganuga Bhakti. And in the beginning, one may practice that as a sadhana. It's called Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. It means you're doing it, but you don't have a full taste for it yet. And later on, you'll develop a taste. But when you do develop this natural attraction for Krishna, especially by hearing about him, who knows the verse, which describes how by hearing about Krishna, one step by step comes to, no, I mean yes, but nectar of instruction. Tanama Rupa. Give them the mic, they got it now. You derailed, start over again. Tanama Rupa Charitaru Sikirtananu Smrityo Kramena Rasanama Nasini Yoja Tishtam Rajetananuragi Jananugami Kalam Nayeda Kilametyupadesha Saram. What's the word in that verse that would indicate that by hearing about Krishna and performing these kinds of practices of devotional service that one might step by step develop higher and higher stages of devotional service, culminating in this kind of spontaneous devotional service. Get a book. Do whatever you have to do. Call a friend. Okay, we'll come back to you when you figure it out. Okay.
So Maharaj, my question is regarding spontaneous devotions. When one reaches that stage of spontaneous devotional service, what is the role of the spiritual master? Spiritual master, I mean, I know in the beginning he guides the activities of the devotee because he doesn't have spontaneous devotion.
Well, one thing to understand is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught that even as one develops spontaneous devotional service, he or she is enacting it internally. Externally, such a person is strictly following the rules and regulations. Shruti smiti paranadi panchatriki vidimbina aikanti ki harir bhaktir upaytayaiva kalpate. Externally following the rules and regulations, internally is worshiping Krishna day and night, spontaneously from within. And there are different roles. In the beginning, one may be receiving very careful guidance from a particular guru, like the Diksha Guru, about following the rules and regulations and coming to the point. And then there may be more instruction for somebody on that level when one's, I mean, I hate to even step into this realm, but as one develops one's Swarup Siddhi or an understanding of what one's eternal relationship is with Krishna, the spiritual master would be there to also guide the disciple in how to serve Krishna in that relationship. And that's really in a summarized form, but there's always guidance coming from Krishna and ways in which he helps us to move forward in coming to our eternal service with him in the spiritual world. Did that help? Okay. Yes. The word?
Well, we have two. Some of us say anugami, the word anugami, which means following, or kramena.
Yes, both those things. And that's in the verse, today's verse, anukulyena krishnanu, which means that anu means to follow. So we heard the last paragraph that we heard was that when you perform devotional services, it should follow the disciplic succession. In other words, you're following a guru who's in the disciplic succession, and that's what connects you to Krishna. And guru means somebody who's following his guru, who's following guru, and it's going back to Krishna. And therefore, there's this sense of following anu, the process as is given in the authorized shastras, and the guru helps one to enact that process. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Good job.
I don't know how to even synthesize this question. It's kind of all over the place right now. But part of the question is, can you define transcendental rajas and its
Transcendental rajas?
Rajas, yes.
You mean passion?
Yes.
Yeah, we can. It's there in the Bhagavatam, actually. It's in the 3rd canto. When Lord Kapila is describing the various stages of devotional service, he talks about devotional service that's performed when one's affected by the mode of ignorance, by the mode of passion, and by the mode of goodness. And then he describes, finally, pure devotional service. So in the realm of in tamas and then rajas, there is a way in which he describes how the practitioner has a sense of being a separatist. For instance, somebody in rajas may be performing devotional service but thinking like, only I know, and only my process of devotional service is very good, everybody else is not very good. And makes distinctions between people and therefore has some sense of separateness from other devotees and so forth. That's in rajas. But if someone wants to run and get me the Madguna Shruti Matrena, Mai Sarva Guhashe, if you find that verse in the 3rd canto, it's 4 verses back from that one. Madguna Shruti Matrena, Mai Sarva Guhashe, Mano Vina Manogatir avichina yata gangam basombuno. Eight 29. 329, 11 through 12. And then if we back up from there, we'll run right into our verse. Yay, the book won. Too late. Okay, here it is. 329, 9. Hey, pretty good. I'm impressed. 329, 9. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. Did that answer your question? You're doing devotional service, but there's a sense that it's for material enjoyment. Rajas.
So then that relates back to the conversation we were having earlier about approaching Krishna with material desires regardless of whether or not we have them.
What do you mean, regardless of whether we have them?
That it's like that we shouldn't feel like we have to enter a stage of
You don't have much choice. I mean, we are who we are. We have to, according to our adhikari, or whatever situation we're in now, then we approach to the best of our ability. From that position, if one carefully follows the process of devotional service, or even not carefully, it'll just take longer, one will become purified by the process. Actually, I should say one will become purified by Krishna, who's within the heart, and by the association of devotees. Happens all the time. Bahavo jnana tapasa, Krishna says, it happens all the time. He says, don't worry. He says, Vitaraga bhayakroda manmaya mamupashrita bahavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagata, Bhagavad Gita. He said, there's several hang-ups people have in the material world, says Krishna. And he said, but don't worry. People overcome these hang-ups all the time. Putamad bhavamagata, because they get purified by devotional service. It's so purifying and powerful that the whatever kind of psychological addictions I have to the material world, they will be overcome by the process of devotional service. And the modes of nature, mam chayo vyabhicharena, again Bhagavad Gita, bhakti yogena sevate, saguna and samati chaitan brahmabhuya yakalpate. Krishna says, if you go on doing devotional service, don't stop. You'll rise above the three modes of material nature. You'll come to the spiritual platform. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Sounds better? Okay. Yeah. So if you continue the process, it's transcendental process. You'll come to that position. Does everyone agree? There it is. So cultivate devotional service, says Rupa Goswami, and he's going to tell how to do it throughout the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So we've heard the basic introduction, how he introduces Krishna, the important points, as the Akila Rasamrita Murti. He is the source of all rasa, of all relationship, of all happiness, of all nectar. You can be confident that if you point your attention towards Krishna and worship him through the process of bhakti, then you'll be successful. We also heard that bhakti is a cultivation. You have to do something in order to develop your a natural love for Krishna, and it's called the process of bhakti sadhana. And that's all available through the teachings of the original acharyas. So anushilana means just follow as it's given to you. You can verify first that this is a authorized source of knowledge, and then if you give yourself to that process, then gradually you'll make advancement. Kramena rasana manasini yoja. Step by step, your mind will come fixed in Krishna consciousness. Yes, last question.
Sorry. What happens though if we're offered devotional service and we want it, but just the juggling of kind of, and there's going to be a lecture about this on Sunday, I believe, but just like it's entering a stage of rajas where it's like, you're like, is this transcendental rajas or is this just rajas for the sake of Does that make sense?
What's the question? Could you say it one sentence?
Like if it's like you're being offered devotional service and it's wonderful, but your life is kind of like.
But what?
How do you juggle? How does one juggle?
Juggle what?
Devotional service and then also like material life. Yeah.
Well, juggling's something you have to learn. It takes a little while. If you start with one ball and you throw it up, the way you learn to juggle actually, you take one ball and you throw it up and down in the air, and then you throw it from one hand to the next like this. If you get that part down, then you can get two balls, and then you start going like this. And then it really happens. And then, if you give me 3 balls, I'll do it right now. But you get 3 going, and it just starts to naturally happen. And so in the devotional service practice, you start off with a very simple way. Try to get one thing going in your life, like, chant your rounds. If you do that, like, start there. Start wherever you can. You get that going, and then you add something else. Pretty soon, people look at you and go, like, how are you juggling 6 things, at the same time? And so I started with 1. You come for the Sunday lecture. Malini is giving the lecture on Sunday, and she's going to tell how to do it. If anybody knows how to do it, if you want to see examples, look at the devotees here at ISV. They have kids. Some people, that's their whole thing. All they do is just mind their kids all the time, and they can't do anything else. But devotees here, they have kids. They have very demanding jobs. And somehow or other, they are always on Sankirtan and always hearing and chanting and always at the temple, even though they have to be everywhere else at the same time. So it's happening right before our eyes. Or, somebody's in school, but then they come for all the programs. That's all that's necessary. Just get in the car and come. You're doing it right now because you got a lot of other things on your mind and things that you have to do when you leave here, right? So then it's like, and then pretty soon you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can keep doing it. So just keep practicing, and you'll get the hang of it, and then it'll look easy. So we started on the Nectar devotion, and we're following in the footsteps of Goswami, and I guarantee you that Prabhupada wanted us to read the Nectar devotion together. So I very much admire your stamina for sitting and listening for 2 hours, 2 straight hours of discussion on the Nectar devotion, and I guarantee you it will never go in vain. So next we're going to have a Artik ceremony, which is one of the most joyful processes of devotional service, and we'll move all the mats out of the way, and we'll stand up and you can dance if you like. And thanks to everybody who joined us online from various parts of the world. Gaur Premanande, Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. That was the weakest one I've ever heard.